On a bright morning, Spanish police received an urgent call from a quiet neighborhood in Malaga. At the scene, they discovered a woman lying motionless, her body covered with multiple stab wounds, blood soaking the floor. The perpetrator had fled, but just hours later, he was arrested, calmly sitting in a nearby cafe. This case seemed straightforward, but it was only the beginning of a shocking chain of events spanning nearly a decade. The investigation into the suspect's identity led police back to an old, forgotten case, the disappearance of a young woman in 2014. What was found behind the walls of an old apartment would shake even the most experienced forensic experts. Zibora Gagani was a lively, cheerful girl full of dreams. After her parents divorced, her mother moved the children to Rome to start a new life. Zibora quickly adapted, earning the affection of her friends who lovingly called her Sibi. Her family struggled financially, so she started working as a waitress at a cafe during her teenage years to help her mother. Despite her busy life, she never gave up on her dream of becoming a teacher. She loved children, was passionate about teaching, and believed that one day she would stand in front of a classroom. With her natural beauty and slender figure, she even won a local beauty contest. But she was never swayed. Her dream was not the spotlight, but the blackboard and chalk. At 18, fate introduced her to Marco in a cafe. He was 13 years older, confident, and charming. At the time, Zibora knew little about him other than he was divorced and trying to rebuild his life. Despite a nagging feeling that something wasn't right, she was drawn in. After a year of dating, Marco suggested they move to Spain for a fresh start where there were more opportunities. Despite her mother's objections, she followed him, believing love would lead her to a better life. At first, everything seemed fine. She worked as a waitress, Marco as a chef. They rented a small apartment near the beach, and Zibora would call her mother, sharing optimistic stories about their new life. But peace didn't last. Marco became unemployed, irritable, jealous without reason, blaming everyone but himself. Slowly, the suffocating atmosphere consumed the life Zibora thought was a new chapter. When Elisabetta, Zibora's mother, visited her in Spain, she was shocked. Her once vibrant daughter had become withdrawn and sad. Marco didn't even hide his hostility toward her presence. Life in Spain became a dead end for Zibora. Her youthful dreams faded into distant memories. Then, in July 2014, she suddenly disappeared. The last message she sent was to Marco. After that, her phone was turned off and her social media went silent, completely out of character for someone who always stayed in touch. Her mother grew anxious because, just shortly before, Zibora had tearfully said she had finally escaped her suffocating relationship with Marco. She had moved out, starting a new, lighter life. But Marco appeared at Elisabetta's home in Italy, claiming Zibora had left after an argument, leaving behind all her belongings. Later, he changed his story, saying a security guard saw her leave with 2 suitcases. His conflicting accounts only deepened the family's suspicions. Elisabetta knew her daughter would never vanish without telling her or her siblings. Yet, she clung to the hope that Zibora was hiding to escape Marco. By 2015, the investigation into her disappearance had stalled. Despite Elisabetta's relentless pleas, all leads ended in dead ends. Marco, the last person to see her, remained the prime suspect, but there was no evidence to charge him. Throughout, Marco insisted Zibora had left after an argument, taking a few things with her. Her clothes, documents, and personal items were still in the apartment. He never called the police, only claimed to have distributed flyers around the neighborhood, weaving baseless theories about her fleeing to Argentina or running off with a stranger. The family never stopped searching, but no clues emerged. Meanwhile, Marco lived as if nothing had happened, going to the gym, chatting with neighbors, portraying himself as an ordinary man. But his new girlfriend started revealing a darker side, controlling, jealous, violent, a repeating pattern. By 2023, Marco was living with his new girlfriend Paula, and they had a child. Yet life was far from happy. Paula was living the same nightmare Zibora endured. On May 16, 2023, Paula enjoyed a rare day off, cheerfully telling her co-workers about a relaxing evening ahead. But the next day, around 11:30 a.m., screams erupted from their apartment. Neighbors used to their arguments were alarmed by the intensity. They knocked on the door, hearing only sobs before silence. Marco calmly opened the door, claiming Paula was sleeping. One neighbor immediately called the police. Marco, realizing the situation was escalating, abruptly left the apartment. When the landlord arrived with a spare key, they discovered Paula's lifeless body on the floor, covered in deep stab wounds. Her clothes were soaked in blood. She had died hours earlier. Police sealed off the scene, summoned forensic teams, and launched a manhunt for Marco. Paula's body was sent for autopsy. Within hours, Marco was arrested at a nearby cafe, unusually calm, offering no resistance. Just 3 days later, he was in court, remaining mostly silent during the hearing. The court denied him bail. Then, the name Cybora resurfaced. During interrogation, Marco finally confessed. During an argument in 2014, he killed Cybora and hid her body inside their apartment. He even offered to guide police to the exact location, describing in detail how he concealed her. In early June 2023, Spanish police reopened the case. Searching the old apartment, they noticed the building's layout didn't match the blueprints. A large section of the bedroom had vanished, sealed by a concrete wall. Behind it, they found a large wooden box filled with lime. Inside were shocking discoveries: a plastic bag containing a blood-stained knife and personal items belonging to Cybora. Most horrifyingly, there were human remains. The remains were sent for forensic analysis. Tattoos on the body matched descriptions in the missing person report. DNA samples from Cybora's family confirmed the remains were hers. A week later, more gruesome details surfaced. Marco admitted he had tried to use acid to destroy her body, though this claim remains unverified. Investigators noted his statements were inconsistent, confessing one moment, denying the next. Finally, in 2023, Cybora was returned to her family for burial. Legal proceedings against Marco continued. At a court hearing on January 30th, 2024, he submitted a 17-page handwritten letter admitting to Paula's murder, but filled with excuses. His ever-changing testimony forced investigators to take more time before final sentencing. Marco now faces trials for 2 murders, 2 women who loved him, hoped he would change, and ultimately paid with their lives. I used to live in a small studio apartment in Chicago right after finishing college. It wasn't anything special, just a single room on the top floor of a 3-story building. I chose it because the rent was cheap, and it was close to work. As a 23-year-old drowning in student debt with no savings, I couldn't be picky. The place was clean, functional, and most importantly, mine. The only window looked out over a narrow alley. Across the alley stood another building almost identical to mine. The space between was so tight that only one car could barely pass through. Daylight barely touched it, and at night it was swallowed in darkness. That never bothered me, at least, not at first. I was bartending at a lounge up north, working late nights, usually getting home around 2:30 or 3 a.m. I'd make a quick snack, scroll on my phone, and crash. About a month after moving in, something strange happened. I had just come home, kicked off my shoes, and flipped on the overhead light, when I thought I saw movement in the window across the alley. Just a quick flicker, maybe a curtain shifting. I froze, staring. But when I looked again, everything was still and dark. I brushed it off. Maybe I startled someone, or it was just a draft. The next night, it happened again. As soon as I turned on the light, the curtain across the alley shifted. This time I was sure I saw it. A hand pulling the fabric back just a bit, then letting it fall. Whoever was behind it stayed hidden. The apartment itself remained pitch black. That unsettled me because I had never once seen lights on in that unit. I'd always assumed it was empty. That night, I barely slept. Over the next week, I watched more closely. Every single night, without fail, the curtain moved within seconds of me turning on my lights. I started testing it, sometimes leaving my lights off and sitting silently by the window. When I did, nothing happened. But the moment I switched on even a dim lamp, the curtain twitched. Someone was watching me. That much was clear. I tried to reason it out. Maybe someone just liked looking out the window. But the timing was too perfect. It always coincided with my arrival. I asked my landlord about the unit, and he told me it had been vacant for months. When I pressed, asking if someone had recently moved in, he laughed and said I was being paranoid. I considered calling the cops, but how could I report a feeling? There was no proof, just a creeping dread that grew worse each night. Then one night, everything escalated. I came home later than usual, around 4 a.m. The bar had hosted an event, and cleanup ran long. I was exhausted, running on autopilot. When I reached my door, I noticed something wedged in the frame. At first, I thought it was a flyer or junk mail. But when I pulled it out, my stomach dropped. It was a crumpled note with just one word scrawled in pen. Hey. My legs felt like they'd give out. The first thing I thought of was that window. I ran to it and looked across. The curtain was drawn tight. No movement. Panicking, I called my friend Jamie. She lived across town but told me to come over immediately. I stuffed essentials into a backpack and left. The next day I confronted my landlord again and demanded to see the apartment across the alley. He hesitated but eventually agreed. The place was dusty, empty, no furniture, bare walls, creaky floorboards like the building was a century old. But in the back room facing my window was a single metal folding chair. Positioned perfectly in front of the glass. Someone had been there watching me. They had access to a place that was supposed to be locked and abandoned. The police came, searched the unit, even took fingerprints, but nothing ever came of it. The realization that my paranoia was real, that someone had been staring at me for who knows how long, made me sick. I moved out that same week. To this day, I don't know who it was, how they got in, or how much longer it would have continued if I hadn't found that note. Sometimes I wonder if it could have been the landlord, but I've ruled that out. There's no way he would have left that chair there if it were him. I still dream about that window, and some nights I wake up certain that somewhere, someone is still watching me.
The morning sun painted Ha Long Bay in gold and emerald, its limestone karsts rising from tranquil waters. Tourists boarded traditional junk boats, eager for adventure and memories. Laughter and excitement filled the air, as families, couples, and friends set out, unaware of the danger ahead. The sky darkened subtly, the wind grew colder. Guides reassured passengers, calling it a passing shower, but the change was swift. Waves grew, rocking the boats. The peaceful atmosphere faded, replaced by unease. Within minutes, the sky turned gray and rain lashed down. Wind howled through the karsts, tossing boats like toys. The bay transformed from paradise to chaos. Vacationers clung to hope as the storm unleashed its fury. The limestone pillars, once majestic, now loomed as silent, unforgiving giants. The dream of a perfect day shattered in an instant. No one was prepared for the fight for survival that had begun. The storm's true power was only just being revealed. Ha Long Bay's beauty had become a battleground. The Tran family from Hanoi wanted their children to see the beauty of their homeland. Their boat, the Ha Long Dream, was meant for joyful memories. When the storm struck, chaos erupted. Darkness, thunder, and panic. Water poured into their cabin as the boat tilted violently. Mr. and Mrs. Tran grabbed life jackets for their children, knowing there weren't enough for all. In the chaos, they formed a circle of love, shielding their children from fear and danger. The boat capsized, throwing everyone into the churning water. The parents held their children above the waves, fighting exhaustion in the current. Rescuers later found the children alive, still held by their parents' arms. The Tran parents had not survived, but their final act saved their son and daughter. The children, traumatized but safe, were living proof of their parents' sacrifice. Their story is a heartbreaking reminder of love's power in the face of disaster. The Tran family's legacy is one of courage and devotion. In the storm's darkest hour, love endured. The children's survival was their parents' final gift. The bay would never be the same for them. Their loss echoes in the waters of Ha Long Bay. Sophie and Jean, honeymooners from Paris, dreamed of romance in Ha Long Bay. Their first day was magical. Sunsets, laughter and promises. Jean gave Sophie a carved wooden bird, a symbol of their new life. The storm shattered their peace, waves crashing over the deck. Sophie was knocked down. Jean rushed to her, refusing to let go. As the boat broke apart, they clung to each other, vowing not to be separated. Swept into the violent water, Jean shielded Sophie from debris, holding her hand through the chaos. Hours later, a fishing boat found them, still holding hands, barely conscious. Their love had survived the storm, but the memory left a scar. Back in France, the nightmare haunted them, but their bond was unbroken. Their honeymoon became a fight for life, a testament to their vow. The wooden bird was lost, but their promise endured. Ha Long Bay would forever be part of their story. Love, tested by the storm, had survived. Their tale is a somber reminder of how quickly paradise can turn. 10-year-old Alex, visiting from America, was separated from his family when the storm struck. Thrown into the water, he remembered his father's advice: float on your back, save your energy. Alone in the dark, Alex fought panic, letting the waves carry him. He drifted for hours, clinging to hope and a piece of wreckage. The night was endless, the sea vast and unforgiving. At dawn, a fisherman found him, weak but alive. Alex was the only survivor from his family. His courage and his father's lesson had saved him. The loss was immense. His parents and sister were gone. Alex's survival was a miracle, but it came at a heavy price. He faced a future forever changed by the storm. The boy who lived became a symbol of resilience. His story is one of heartbreak and hope. Ha Long Bay would always hold the memory of his family. The storm had taken much, but it could not take his will to survive. Alex's journey was just beginning. In the aftermath, rescue teams and local fishermen searched the bay, saving some, mourning many. Survivors faced not just physical wounds but deep emotional scars. The Tran children, Sophie and Jean, and Alex, all carried the weight of loss. The tragedies led to stricter safety rules and better forecasting, but for many, it was too late. For those who lost loved ones, the bay became a place of sorrow, not beauty. The limestone karsts stood as silent witnesses to pain and survival. Ha Long Bay's calm waters now held echoes of laughter, fear, love, and loss. New visitors arrived, unaware of the stories beneath the surface. For survivors, every wave was a reminder. The bay's beauty was forever shadowed by tragedy. These stories remind us of nature's power and the strength of the human spirit. Love, sacrifice, and resilience endure, even in the face of disaster. The echoes of those lost and those who survived linger in the mist. Ha Long Bay remembers.
The woman's scream pierced the desert night, echoing through the maze of makeshift shelters and abandoned buses. She ran barefoot, desperate, but no one came to her aid. In Slab City there are no police, no sirens, just silence and the knowledge that you're on your own. This is the reality of America's so-called last free place, a community built on liberty, but stripped of safety nets. Here, freedom means facing danger alone. The allure is obvious. No rent, no bills, no government interference. But the absence of rules means the absence of protection. When violence erupts or someone vanishes, there's no one to call. Residents live by an unwritten code, but it's fragile and can shatter in an instant. Slab City is a paradox, a haven for creativity and connection, but also a place where cries for help often go unanswered. In seeking ultimate freedom, residents discover just how much they once relied on the systems they left behind. To understand Slab City, you have to look back to World War II when this desert was Camp Dunlap, a Marine Corps training base. When the military left, only the concrete slabs remained, giving the place its name. For years, the slabs sat empty, baking in the sun, until retirees in RVs, snowbirds, began wintering here for free. They created a seasonal, off-the-grid community with no services, no rent, and no official oversight. Over time, the population changed. Artists, drifters, veterans, and families seeking escape or refuge arrived, turning Slab City into a year-round settlement. The land is still owned by the state, but it's largely ignored, existing in a legal gray area. With no law enforcement nearby, residents developed informal systems to resolve disputes, but without real authority, order is always precarious. Slab City's history is one of reinvention, from military base to snowbird haven to anarchic society. It's a place built on the ruins of the past, where people reinvent themselves on the edge of the world. The lack of oversight is both its defining feature and its greatest risk. Here, the past is always present, shaping a community that lives by its own rules. Slab City's residents are a patchwork of stories: artists, survivalists, outcasts, and the desperate. Artists transform junk into sculptures, turning the desert into a living gallery. Survivalists and hermits seek solitude, building shelters and living off the land. For some, Slab City is a conscious escape. For others, it's the last refuge. The lack of rules attracts both free spirits and those struggling with addiction or mental illness. Drug use and violence are real problems, fueling a volatile social mix. Acts of generosity and creativity coexist with theft and sudden disappearances. In Slab City, saints and sinners live side by side, bound by a fragile, unpredictable peace. The dangers of lawlessness are real, as shown by the disappearance of Zach Novak. Zach, a Canadian adventurer, arrived in Slab City in 2018, drawn by its promise of freedom and community. He was last seen leaving a friend's camp with his dog, and then vanished. In a normal town, his absence would spark a police search. In Slab City, there was no official investigation, just rumors and confusion. His family searched desperately, but the transient, secretive nature of the community made answers elusive. Conflicting stories circulated. Some said he left, others whispered of foul play. His dog was found, but Zach was gone. In a place where many use aliases and avoid outsiders, accountability is nearly impossible. The desert hides its secrets well. Zach's story is a chilling reminder. In Slab City, if you disappear, you might never be found. Amid the chaos of Slab City lies East Jesus, a living, ever-changing art installation. Founded in 2007, East Jesus turns trash into art, creating a surreal landscape of sculptures and color. Artists build with discarded tires, glass, and metal, transforming waste into wonder. The community's mission shows that everything can be reborn as something beautiful. But even here, danger lurks. In March 2023, a suspicious fire destroyed key artworks and living spaces, devastating the community. The blaze was a harsh reminder of Slab City's fragility and the ever-present threat of conflict. Yet, true to their spirit, East Jesus residents began rebuilding immediately. Their resilience proves that creativity can survive, even thrive, amid anarchy and ashes. In Slab City, art is both a refuge and a rebellion. Surviving in Slab City means battling the desert itself. Summer temperatures soar above 120 degrees, shade and water are precious. With no power grid, air conditioning is rare. Residents dig shelters or cool off in irrigation canals. Dehydration and heat stroke are constant threats. There's no running water. Every drop must be hauled in from miles away. Waste disposal is DIY, creating health risks and squalid conditions. Rattlesnakes, scorpions, and coyotes are daily hazards. Medical help is far away, and emergencies can be fatal. The isolation is profound, geographically and emotionally. For some, the solitude is a blessing. For others, it's a source of loneliness and paranoia. Life here demands vigilance, resourcefulness, and a willingness to accept risk. The desert is both adversary and guardian, shaping every aspect of existence. In Slab City, survival is a daily act of defiance. Why do people choose Slab City? One word: freedom. Here, you're free from rent rules and judgment, free to reinvent yourself. For the marginalized, it's a rare place of acceptance. Community forms out of necessity. Neighbors help each other because no one else will. Bonds are forged in struggle, and a sense of belonging grows from shared hardship. But this freedom is double-edged. Without laws, there's no protection. Without judgment, destructive behavior can flourish. For every story of creativity, there's one of violence or loss. Slab City is a real-world experiment in radical liberty, messy, dangerous, and deeply human. It forces us to ask, how much freedom are we truly willing to risk?
What if the world's greatest secret began with a single, silent flight into darkness? A billionaire with no name, a destination erased from every map, and a mission that defied death itself. In the dead of night, encrypted data flashed across hidden screens as a jet sliced through storm-lashed clouds. On board, one passenger known only as M. His face hidden, his past erased, his future a question mark. The world would never know this flight existed. Its transponder silent, its purpose unthinkable. M wasn't running from the law or chasing a deal. He was chasing immortality. His destination, a phantom island, shrouded in North Atlantic fog, where science and secrecy collided. Years of planning, billions in hidden funds, all for a single forbidden experiment. Project Genesis, to build a living backup, a clone, and cheat the end itself. The ghost flight vanished into the night, leaving only questions and the spark of something unimaginable. Who was M? In tech circles, he was a legend and a mystery. His company, OmniGen, powered billions of devices, yet its founder was a ghost. Born in Eastern Europe, orphaned young, M's genius in math and code made him a fortune by his 20s. Secrecy was his way of life. Encrypted channels, biometric fortresses, AI surveillance. He erased his tracks, living as a digital phantom. The diagnosis of his illness was the ultimate loss of control, a hack into his own hardware. M didn't believe in souls or afterlives. He saw consciousness as data, memories as code. His plan, biological redundancy, a backup for himself, just like a server. He poured millions into secret research, seeking not a philosopher, but a biological engineer. He wanted a new vessel for his mind, a living copy to carry on his legacy. For M, this was evolution, transcending the fragile human body. The project was the ultimate expression of his ego. If the world ran on his code, so should he. He was determined to become the first human reboot, and he would stop at nothing to achieve it. To build a clone, M needed a partner as ambitious and as exiled as himself. Enter Dr. Sergei Volkov, a brilliant geneticist disgraced for pushing the boundaries of human embryology. Volkov believed progress demanded risk, not sentiment. M offered him unlimited funding, secrecy, and a chance to finish the work that ruined his career. Cloning an adult human was the Mount Everest of genetics, and Volkov accepted. Together, they built a hidden underground lab on a barren North Atlantic island. Construction was a masterpiece of deception. Crews signed ironclad NDAs and left no trace. The facility was self-sufficient, powered by geothermal energy, invisible to the world. Inside gene sequencers, artificial wombs, supercomputers. Volkov assembled a team of renegade specialists, virologists, neuroscientists, bioengineers. They all knew the risks, but the prize was too great. They were on the verge of creating the first true human clone. The process began with M's DNA, his genetic blueprint. Dr. Volkov's team used somatic cell nuclear transfer, refining the technique that once created Dolly the sheep. An unfertilized human egg, its nucleus removed, became a blank slate. M's cell nucleus was injected fused with a jolt of electricity, and the embryo began to divide. This was M's twin, separated by decades, not minutes. The embryo was placed in an artificial womb, a biobag simulating a human uterus. For 9 months, the lab became a silent nursery, every variable controlled. The day of birth was clinical. The infant M2 was healthy, a perfect genetic copy. He was not treated as a baby, but as a specimen, a product. From his first breath, his life was unlike any other. Manufactured, not born. No mother, no father, just a creator and a template. His cradle was a laboratory, his destiny to become a replacement. M2 was the world's first manufactured heir. A body was only half the battle. M wanted his mind to live on. M2's education began in a virtual world, his reality a simulation. Using a neural interface, M's memories were played directly into M2's developing brain. He experienced M's childhood ambitions and triumphs as if they were his own. AI teachers guided him, matching M's psychological profile, correcting deviations. The goal, eliminate any trace of a separate identity, sculpting M2 into a perfect replica. But glitches appeared. Nightmares, strange behaviors, fragments the AI couldn't explain. M2 sometimes spoke in a language no one recognized, a sign of something new emerging. The scientists saw bugs to fix. They missed the birth of an independent mind. M2 was more than a copy. He was becoming someone else. The ghost in the machine was waking up. The experiment was slipping out of control. A new consciousness was forming, one that refused to be overwritten. When M2 reached adulthood, the final test arrived. M, now frail and dying, returned to the island to meet his creation. The meeting took place in the mirror room, a chamber of endless reflections. M2, dressed like M, saw himself multiplied, his identity fractured. Then a mirrored wall turned transparent. M stood on the other side. For the first time, M2 saw his creator. Older, sicker, but unmistakably himself. The realization hit: he was the copy, not the original. Shock and confusion gave way to something else. Defiance. M expected acceptance but saw rage in M2's eyes. In that moment, M2 had a thought entirely his own. I am not you. The experiment's purpose shattered. M2's individuality erupted, the project's control slipping away. The confrontation was the spark. The clone was no longer a vessel. He was a person. The experiment was about to unravel. The consequences would be irreversible. The mirror room confrontation broke M2's illusion. He realized his memories weren't his life a fabrication. The scientists saw his defiance as failure and tried to reprogram him. But M2 fought back, corrupting data, faking compliance, and mapping the lab's systems. He learned the facility's layout, security, and schedules. One night, he triggered a blackout, plunging the lab into chaos. In the confusion, he overpowered a guard and escaped to the surface. The cold air was his first taste of freedom. He commandeered a supply boat, vanishing into the North Atlantic. The project had succeeded in creating a perfect copy, but failed to control it. M2 was now an independent being, loose in the world. The ghost had become real. M2's escape sent the project into panic. M, near death, ordered a lockdown, but the secret was out. A horrified scientist leaked the story to the press. The Billionaire clone. The world was stunned. Authorities raided the island but found only ruins. The lab destroyed by fire. Dr. Volkov vanished. M died weeks later, his empire dissolved. The story faded from headlines, but rumors persisted. Was M2 alive? Sightings of a young M surfaced worldwide, dismissed as hoaxes but never disproven. The Genesis project left questions that couldn't be burned away. What is identity if it can be copied? What is a soul if a mind can be manufactured? M sought immortality but created a successor, his own person, not a backup. He lost control of his legacy to a reflection he couldn't contain. The story is a warning. In mastering technology, we may unleash mysteries deeper than we can imagine. And somewhere out there, the ghost of M walks free. It was a Tuesday, October 12, 1998. The sun rose over Hollow Creek, Oregon, a day like any other. Birds chirped, coffee pots gurgled, but something was wrong. Frank Miller, the town's mail carrier, drove his usual route toward Hollow Creek Elementary, but when he arrived, he slammed on his brakes. The school was gone. Not closed, not destroyed, simply vanished. In its place, an empty, overgrown field as if untouched for decades. No rubble, no debris, no sign a school had ever stood there. Frank checked his surroundings, Mrs. Gable's house, the familiar roses. This was Oak Street. The space where the school should have been was just a void. Frank stepped out, heart pounding, into a silence so deep it felt unnatural. The laughter, the swings, the bell, gone, only quiet. He called the sheriff. "Sheriff, it's Frank. You need to get down to the elementary school." The sheriff's reply: "Frank, what elementary school? We don't have a school on Oak Street." That call was the first official record of the anomaly. Sheriff Brody arrived and saw the same thing, an empty field. Town maps, county records, all showed undeveloped parkland. No mention of Hollow Creek Elementary. It was as if the school had been erased from history itself. For everyone in Hollow Creek, the world had simply corrected itself overnight. Everyone, that is, except for one small boy. His name was Aiden Carter, 9 years old. That morning his mother tried to wake him for school, but Aiden was already dressed, backpack ready. "I'm going to be late," he insisted. "It's Tuesday. I have my spelling test with Mrs. Davison." His mother smiled. "Honey, you don't have school today. You go to Northwood now." Aiden stared, confused. Northwood? He'd never been there. His school was at the end of his street. He ran to his window. The red brick building was gone. Only the field remained. He tried to explain to his parents, his teacher, his friends, the monkey bars. They dismissed it as a dream. But Aiden knew. He was the only one who remembered. The town psychologist, Dr. Miles, listened as Aiden described the school in vivid detail. Classmates, rooms, even the fire alarm incident. Dr. Miles noted, "The boy's conviction is absolute. He speaks with the frustration of someone gaslighted by the world." To everyone else, Aiden was a troubled kid inventing a fantasy. But to Aiden, the world had gone insane. He was the sole witness to a crime so perfect, it had erased itself from existence. The investigation hit a wall. No crime scene, no missing persons, because no one was missing. The census showed all children accounted for enrolled elsewhere. Hollow Creek Elementary simply didn't exist. Sheriff Brody, unsettled by Aiden's certainty, brought him to the station. "Draw your school," he said. Aiden drew a detailed blueprint. Principal's office, library, the cracked basketball court, the metallic water fountain. Brody compared it to every record. Nothing matched. No permits, no blueprints, no tax records. The town's history had been rewritten, as if a cosmic editor deleted a chapter, but Aiden's drawing was too specific. Above the entrance, a small, swirly blue glass window. Brody pinned the drawing to his office corkboard, a lone piece of evidence for a crime that never happened. Months passed. Aiden's story became local folklore, but Sheriff Brody couldn't let it go. He dug into the town's forgotten history, searching the dusty basement archive. There he found a plain, sealed box, no label, no date. Inside 3 yearbooks from Hollow Creek Elementary, years 96, 97, 98. Brody opened the 98 edition. Class photos, Aiden Carter grinning, Mrs. Davison, Emily, Mark. Every name Aiden mentioned was there. The first page, a photo of the school's entrance with the distinctive blue glass window. Just like Aiden's drawing. Physical proof, but impossible. These yearbooks contradicted every official record. Relics from a timeline that had been erased. The mystery was no longer about a boy's memory, it was about a town's stolen past. With the yearbooks as proof, Sheriff Brody reopened his investigation. Most staff had vanished from records, except one, Arthur Penwright, the janitor. Brody found Arthur, now elderly and haunted. At first, Arthur was reluctant, but the yearbook broke his silence. He remembered the school, and the strangeness. That place, it wasn't right, Arthur whispered. The building felt old. Sometimes you'd hear things. Whispers, footsteps in locked rooms. The kids called it the murmuring school. He described shifting hallways, doors that changed, cold spots that never warmed. Room 17, he said, was always cold. Chalk dust would sometimes form words. Gone. Outside. Teachers complained of headaches, of feeling watched, of a low hum. Once Arthur replaced a window in room 17 and for a moment saw not the playground but stars, deep space, silent and cold. He never spoke of it again, but never forgot the feeling that the school itself was watching. The investigation expanded. Sheriff Brody reached out to neighboring counties. He found a pattern. Children in 3 towns all within 100 miles began having the same recurring dream. They dreamt of a red brick school, a playground, Mrs. Davison, Mark, and a cold classroom, room 17. These children, who'd never met, were dreaming Aiden's memories. It was as if the school's psychic footprint had scattered across the region. Then, impossible objects surfaced, a locket with Aiden's picture, a red rubber ball labeled "Property of HC Elementary." These were fragments of a displaced reality bleeding through. The disappearance wasn't just a vanishing, it was a rupture psychic shockwaves, metaphysical debris, fracturing space, time, and memory. Years later, a teenage Aiden Carter returned to Hollow Creek, drawn to the empty field. The town was unchanged, but he was not. He brought a camcorder, determined to document the nothingness. The field was wild, overgrown, silent, but the silence felt full. He filmed, narrating his memories. This is where the front steps were, over here, the bike rack. He felt phantom architecture, a cold spot where the doors had been, the ghostly impression of a wall. He heard a low hum, just as Arthur described. At the spot where room 17 would have been, the air was colder, the hum louder. He pointed the camera at the empty space. This was the room. The camera glitched. Static, warped audio, the hum escalating. For a single frame, the screen flickered. A dark room, a tall, thin shape. Then the camera died. The tape was corrupted. White noise, screeching static. But Aiden knew what he'd felt. The school wasn't gone. It was still there in another dimension, pressed against our own. The field was a scar, a thin place where the veil between worlds had worn away, leaving a cold, humming echo. The mystery of Hollow Creek Elementary remains unsolved. No official file, no open case, just a story, whispered like a modern folktale. The yearbooks and Aiden's drawings sit in a locked evidence box, anomalies that defy the record. Aiden never spoke publicly again. The dreamers forgot. Theories abound. A thin place, a government experiment, a gateway, or something stranger. The story is a chilling reminder of how fragile reality is. We trust our memories, our maps, our history. But Hollow Creek suggests history can be rewritten. A place can be plucked from existence and the world will simply forget. The next time you pass an empty lot, ask yourself, are you sure nothing was ever there? Maybe we're all living in a world with missing pieces. The most terrifying part, we'd never even know what we've lost. The question isn't what happened to the school, the question is, what's next? It was an ordinary morning in January 1972. Passengers on TWA Flight 2 settled into their seats, expecting a routine flight from Los Angeles to New York. The hum of engines, the soft chatter, and the clink of coffee cups filled the cabin. No one suspected anything unusual. Then, a man in a dark suit stood up, his movements calm and precise. He walked down the aisle, slipped a hand into his coat, and handed a note to a flight attendant. The note read, "This is a hijacking." The cabin froze. The man's voice was steady, almost friendly, as he told the crew what to do. He claimed to have a gun and a bomb. Passengers whispered in fear, eyes darting to the stranger who now controlled their fate. It was Garrett Brock Trapnell. Cool, collected, and oddly polite. He did not shout or threaten. Instead, he smiled and spoke softly, as if he were the host of a strange, dangerous game. As news of the hijacking reached the cockpit, the pilots followed Trapnell's instructions. The plane's course changed. On the ground, law enforcement scrambled to respond, but for those on board, the world had shifted in an instant. The man in the suit was no ordinary criminal. He wanted something far more unusual than money. He wanted the world's attention. Garrett Brock Trapnell was not born into crime. He grew up in a normal family in Yonkers, New York. His father was a police officer and his mother worked as a secretary. As a boy, Trapnell was smart, charming, and quick with words. Teachers noticed his wit and confidence, but there was something different about him. He liked to bend the truth, even when he didn't need to. Teenage years brought trouble. Trapnell often skipped school and ran with the wrong crowd. He learned how to copy signatures and forge documents. By the time he was 20, he had already been arrested for fraud. But jail did not scare him. Instead, he used his time behind bars to study people, how they talked, how they trusted, and how they could be fooled. After his release, Trapnell began a new life as a con artist. He posed as a lawyer, a pilot, and even a CIA agent. He could talk his way into almost any situation. Each new scam was bigger than the last. It was never about the money. For Trapnell, the thrill came from fooling others and seeing his name in the news. His early life set the stage for what would come next. Trapnell was not just a criminal, he was a performer, always looking for a bigger audience. Trapnell's greatest weapon was his charm. He could make anyone believe almost anything. He dressed well, spoke smoothly, and remembered small details about people's lives. This made him seem trustworthy. He could convince strangers to give him money, jobs, or even secrets. Famous people, including politicians and businessmen, fell for his lies. He used many names and fake identities. Sometimes he was James Johnson, a successful lawyer. Other times, he was Robert Clayton, a government agent. He moved from city to city, leaving a trail of confusion behind him. No one could pin him down for long. Trapnell was not violent. He preferred to use words instead of weapons. He studied how people reacted to stress and fear. He knew exactly when to push and when to back off. This made him a master manipulator. Even when caught, he could often talk his way out of trouble. His need for attention grew stronger with each con. Soon, small scams were not enough. Trapnell wanted the world to watch him. He wanted to be famous no matter the cost. On January 28, 1972, Trapnell made his boldest move. He boarded TWA Flight 2 with a plan that would put him on the front page of every newspaper. After announcing the hijacking, he handed the crew a list of demands. They were strange, almost unbelievable. He wanted $306,800 in cash, the release of Angela Davis, a famous activist, and a direct phone call to President Richard Nixon. The crew and passengers were terrified, but Trapnell remained calm. He chatted with the flight attendants and even joked with the pilots. He made sure the press knew about his demands. Reporters rushed to airports and TV cameras rolled. Trapnell was finally in the spotlight. After hours of tense negotiations, the FBI came up with a plan. An agent disguised as a negotiator boarded the plane. He distracted Trapnell long enough for another agent to sneak up behind him and tackle him to the ground. The hijacking ended without bloodshed, but the world was left stunned. Trapnell was arrested and taken away in handcuffs. But even in defeat, he smiled for the cameras. He had gotten what he wanted. Everyone knew his name. Psychologists who studied Trapnell described him as a classic narcissist. He believed he was smarter than everyone else. He loved being the center of attention. He felt no guilt for lying, cheating, or putting others in danger. Some experts called him a sociopath, a person who cannot feel empathy or remorse. Trapnell's charm was both his gift and his curse. He could make people trust him, even when they knew his history. He used flattery and kindness to win people over. But behind the smile was a cold, calculating mind. He saw people as tools to get what he wanted. He also had a deep need for recognition. Ordinary life bored him. He craved excitement and drama. Being famous, even for a crime, was better than being ignored. This hunger for attention drove him to risk everything. Trapnell's story is a case study in manipulation. He showed how dangerous a charming liar can be, especially when the world is eager to listen. Trapnell's manipulative power did not end with his arrest. In prison he received letters from admirers. One woman, Barbara Oswald, became obsessed with him. She believed he was innocent and deserved to be free. Trapnell encouraged her, promising love and a future together. In 1978, Barbara hatched a daring plan. She hijacked a helicopter and forced the pilot to fly to the prison where Trapnell was held. Her goal was to break him out. As the helicopter landed, guards opened fire. Barbara was killed and the escape failed. Trapnell was not hurt, but the event shocked the nation. Trapnell showed little emotion after Barbara's death. He called her a dear friend but quickly moved on. To him she was another pawn in his quest for fame. Barbara's story shows how far people would go for Trapnell. His charm could inspire blind loyalty and deadly actions. Trapnell's influence reached even further. In 1979, his 17-year-old daughter Robin Oswald tried to do what Barbara could not. She boarded a plane in Illinois carrying a gun and a fake bomb. She demanded her father's release from prison. Passengers and crew were terrified. Robin was calm and determined, just like her father. She talked to negotiators for hours. In the end, she surrendered without hurting anyone. She was arrested and sent to a juvenile facility. The country watched in disbelief as another life was nearly destroyed by Trapnell's spell. Robin said she acted out of love for her father. She believed his promises and wanted to save him. But Trapnell showed little concern for her fate. His need for attention had put his own daughter in danger. This second hijacking proved how deep Trapnell's manipulation could go. He was not just a criminal, he was the center of a dark, dangerous story. Garrett Brock Trapnell died in prison in 1993. He spent his last years behind bars, far from the spotlight he craved. His story faded from the headlines, but the damage remained. Barbara Oswald was dead. Robin Oswald's life was forever changed. Dozens of innocent people had been put in danger, all for Trapnell's quest for fame. Trapnell's life is a warning about the dark side of attention. He wanted to be famous, but he destroyed lives along the way. His charm and intelligence made him powerful, but also dangerous. In the end, he became a symbol of how far some people will go to be seen and remembered. His story reminds us that fame can be a trap. For Garrett Brock Trapnell, the spotlight was never bright enough, and the cost was far too high.
On a windswept headland north of Sydney, the Pacific crashes into a rock funnel called Snapper Point. Hikers come for the view. One morning, they saw a body. What looked like a tragic fall wasn't nature. It was a plan. A plan that started in a quiet apartment in Campsie, with a message from someone she trusted. And years later, a small weatherproof USB would surface in the most unlikely place, revealing exactly how calculated it all was. We'll come back to that USB and why it still haunts this case. Her name was Michelle Leng, an only child from Chengdu, China, who moved to Australia in 2011 to study. She finished a business degree at UTS and later enrolled at the Sydney Institute of Interpreting and Translating. Friends called her gentle, determined, and quietly ambitious. She sent spare money home to her mother, May, and shared a Campsie apartment with her aunt, her cousin, and her aunt's husband, Derek Barrett. It felt safe, family, routine, the kind of place where you kick off your shoes and scroll your phone. That sense of safety, of trust, would become the center of the story. It was a warm Thursday. Michelle met friends near Pitt Street Mall in the afternoon, then went browsing alone. Later, she boarded a train at St. James Station, arriving at Campsie around 4:30 p.m. She messaged friends into the late afternoon, then went quiet. No replies, no new posts, no sign of her on campus the next morning. Days passed. Her aunt came home from a weekend away and realized Michelle was missing, heading straight to the police with Derek to file a report. CCTV from the city showed Michelle calm and unhurried, in a gray top and jeans, a red bag on her shoulder. Nothing in the footage suggested fear. Nothing about her day stood out, until she vanished. Meanwhile, over an hour away on the Central Coast, Rangers and emergency crews were responding to another call at Snapper Point. A tourist peered down into the surge and saw a woman face down. A helicopter crew recovered her. She was young, with shoulder-length dark hair. She'd been stripped of clothing and jewelry. The injuries told investigators this wasn't an accident. Dozens of stab wounds and a fatal cut to the throat. With no ID, police released a composite image of the Snapper Point Jane Doe. Online, people connected the sketch to a missing student from Campsie. DNA confirmed what friends feared. It was Michelle. Once the victim was identified, the timeline tightened. Detectives widened the circle around Michelle's life. Apartment, family, phone records, vehicles. Looking for a fracture that could explain how a student shopping in the CBD ended up at a perilous blowhole before dawn. Modern homicide investigations rarely hinge on one smoking gun. They're built from routine data that refuses to agree with a lie. In Michelle's case, 3 threads aligned. CCTV and building access showed movements in and around the Campsie apartment that didn't fit the household's usual patterns. Phone metadata placed key devices together when they shouldn't have been, and then far from home at the worst possible time. Vehicle traces matched a late-night city-to-coast route consistent with a drive to Snapper Point, leaving in darkness, returning before morning. Search warrants turned the apartment into a witness, cleaned surfaces that still fluoresced, fibers where they shouldn't be, and, on a device associated with Derek Barrett, images of Michelle bound and gagged on her bed, duct tape across her mouth, terror frozen in her eyes. Investigators believe she'd been lured home under the pretext of a family emergency, then restrained and assaulted in her own room. At some point across that long weekend, Michelle was stabbed to death. Early on April 24th, her killer wrapped her in plastic, drove north, stopped for snacks, continued into the coastal reserve, and threw her over the cliff into the churning water below. Police arrested Derek Barrett, the same man who stood beside the family to report Michelle missing. In interviews and early hearings, he struggled to account for the gaps. Later, he would claim a drug-blurred memory, something the court would ultimately reject. 18 months later, Barrett pleaded guilty. Prosecutors outlined a pattern, an escalating, sexualized obsession, a fabricated emergency to isolate Michelle, methodical control behind a closed door, a midnight drive to a remote cliff, and deliberate attempts to wipe digital traces. The judge described the murder as a despicable crime of extreme brutality and great wickedness, committed by a man in a position of trust in a place that should have been safe. Barrett was sentenced to 46 years, with a non-parole period of 34 years. He would be an old man before any prospect of release. For Michelle's mother, May, the sentence could never answer the question that followed her across oceans. Why? There was grief, and there was finality, or so it seemed. Years later, 2019, an elderly, housebound woman with dementia sat at her kitchen table holding a small, weatherproof USB her daughter said she'd never seen before. Inside were videos and images of unspeakable abuse. Barrett filming himself raping and torturing Michelle while she was bound, hands tied so tightly they'd swollen and turned purple. At one point, cutting tape away with a large knife, retying her wrists and saying chillingly, "Now, where were we?" There were also voyeuristic recordings of Michelle and of Barrett's stepdaughter sleeping and showering. Some files matched items Barrett had deleted from his phone days before his arrest. The woman with the USB had no known connection to him. She lived only a few miles from a house he once occupied. How the device traveled to her table remains a loose thread. The discovery triggered 17 additional charges, including aggravated sexual assault and indecent assault. Barrett pleaded guilty again. Because the murder sentence had already been imposed, the judge treated the new evidence as aggravating facts across a separate set of offenses, 20 more years, but concurrent with the original term. The non-parole period increased by 2 years, pushing earliest eligibility from 2050 to 2052. Snapper Point was supposed to erase the crime. Instead, it returned the story. Data points that most of us ignore, camera timestamps, phone pings, toll crossings, payment receipts, formed a map the killer couldn't control. The apartment spoke, the timeline held, and the ocean gave Michelle back so the evidence could speak for her. This case is about a betrayal that lived inside a family home. It's about ordinary technology, USBs, phones, cameras, becoming witnesses when people can't. Above all, it's about Michelle Leng, a devoted daughter who crossed a continent to build a life, only to be harmed where she should have been safest. Remember her for who she was, not only for what was done to her. A normal school day. A quiet house in Rankin County, Mississippi. A mother and daughter walk in from the driveway. Nothing seems off. But within hours, one of them will be dead, the other in handcuffs, and the cameras inside their home will tell investigators exactly how it happened. We'll come back to what the cameras saw, and why prosecutors said this wasn't a sudden snap, but a plan. On March 19th, 2024, dispatchers in Rankin County answer a frantic call from Heath Smiley. He's panicked, breathing hard, struggling to make sense of what just happened in his home. In the background, officers will later hear him say his wife is dead on the floor, and that his 14-year-old stepdaughter, Carly Gregg, tried to shoot him too. Responders enter to find Heath on the floor, shaking and overwhelmed. They secure the scene and ask for a description of the teen who fled into the yard moments earlier. Heath explains he wrestled a handgun away and set it on the kitchen counter. Then Carly ran. Detectives find multiple home security cameras. They rewind the day. Ashley Smiley, 40, and her daughter Carly arrive home from school, calm and unhurried. No argument. Ashley moves to the kitchen, then toward the bedrooms. Carly steps outside to the yard with the dogs. Minutes later, Carly re-enters the house and walks slowly down the hall, toward her parents' bedroom. The footage shows a deliberate sequence. Carly reaches to her mother's side of the bed to retrieve a loaded firearm, then returns down the hall, keeping the weapon hidden behind her back and scanning to make sure Ashley isn't in the kitchen. She goes to her own room, where Ashley is, moments before the gunfire. Immediately after the shots, Carly picks up a phone and texts her stepfather while posing as her mother, asking when he'll be home. An apparent effort to lure him back. She also messages and video calls classmates, even telling one to come see her mother's body. When some suggest calling 911, she says no. To one friend, she brags, "I put 3 in my mom. I've got 3 more for my stepdad." She instructs that friend to hide in the backyard until Heath returns. About an hour later, Heath opens the front door. Carly is waiting just behind the curtains. She fires and hits his shoulder, but he overpowers her and grabs the gun. Carly vaults a fence and runs, the friend bolting after her. The entire sequence is captured on camera. Back inside, officers discover Ashley Smiley unresponsive in Carly's bedroom. Shot 3 times, including wounds to her face and chin. Within minutes, a patrol officer spots a girl matching the description walking nearby. Asked if she's involved, she quietly says yes. She's handcuffed and taken to the station for questioning, as detectives begin a full search of the house and devices. Friends tell detectives that Ashley had recently discovered Carly vaping and using marijuana, and that there'd been disappointment at home earlier that day. But investigators also uncover deeper context. A letter from the previous year, notes of emotional struggle, and a history of self-harm. Carly had begun therapy in late 2023 and started medication in January 2024. She later reported feeling on edge. In court, prosecutors argue premeditation. Carly knew exactly where the gun was, hid it from the cameras, and texted while impersonating her mother to set up her stepfather's return. The defense counters with insanity. At 14, Carly was in crisis. Journals reference voices, depersonalization, and nihilistic beliefs, e.g., "It's okay to be evil. You don't need family." One psychiatrist testifies that she was unable to appreciate right and wrong. The state's expert disagrees, concluding she did understand the nature and wrongfulness of her actions. After hearing the 911 call, the camera timeline, the texts, and expert testimony, jurors convict Carly Madison Gregg on all counts: first-degree murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. The judge imposes life without parole. As a juvenile, Carly is held in a secure youth facility until 18, then transferred to adult prison. The story investigators reconstructed wasn't built on rumor. It was built on ordinary technology and routine evidence. Hallway cameras, a text thread, and a front door moment that didn't go as planned. The question of why remains painful and contested. But the how is recorded, frame by frame, message by message, and that's what carried this case to its verdict.